It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, your emails at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. You know, over the last few years, if you listen to Gavin Newsom, he'll tell you he's done everything he can possibly do to change the legal structure to make it easier to get the homeless off the streets. Whether that was participating in the case that went to the Supreme Court about going after people that refuse shelter, or all of the laws that he has championed, that the legislature has passed and that he has signed to make it easier to deal with the obviously mentally ill people that are wandering around on the streets. He'll talk about Care Court. He'll talk about reforming LPS, which is the conservatorship law. We'll get into that definition in a bit. And he's talked about so many different things. Most of the things he's talked about only just got implemented recently or still haven't been implemented. But like so many things when it comes to Gavin Newsom, he has a bad habit of overpromising and way under-delivering. Typically, you're supposed to under-promise and over-deliver. But when it comes to California and reforming our mental health system and making sure that the obviously mentally ill and rattled with meth people that are on the streets can get taken off the streets against their will, what we have done hasn't really done a whole lot. So this was discussed today at today's LA County Board of Supervisors meeting because 2 years ago, SB 43 was signed into law. SB 43 was supposed to expand conservatorships and expand the definition of gravely disabled, somebody that cannot take care of themselves. And Gavin Newsom, much like Care Court right next to it, said this is going to be the thing. This is going to be the thing that gets thousands and thousands of people into treatment because we know they're refusing to get treatment and they can't make that decision for themselves. Well, this bill is finally going to be implemented in Los Angeles County starting in January. And so there was a roundtable of the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Health Services and, of course, the Department of Public Health, led by Barbara Ferrer. And let me give you the headline right now. Gavin Newsom's game changer, SB 43, that was going to massively expand the definition of gravely disabled to include people that have substance use disorder, you know, like meth, like fentanyl. When this is fully implemented, the experts at LA County believe it will take 75 people off the streets. Not 75,000, 75. Let's find out what happened here, and let's find out why our bureaucracy is such an unbelievable mess when it comes to what shouldn't be that complicated, taking somebody who can't make decisions for themselves and getting them into care. Because right now, we're leaving them on the streets to harm themselves and harm the rest of us. And look who's starting it off. It's the queen of COVID, Barbara Ferrer.
Go ahead then, Dr. Ferrer.
Not a doctor. Has a PhD in social welfare, but not a doctor. Although she does wear the white lab coat, and she did today.
And team?
Okay. Dr. Wong is on her way, but I will definitely get us started. And if we could have the slides.
You want an example of how the bureaucracy in Los Angeles is wasting money every 10 seconds? Every time they have one of these presentations, the people who are giving the presentations can't be bothered to click a mouse, so they have to constantly call out,
next slide,
as someone has to operate a laptop just to click next slide.
Next slide.
Some things never change.
So I'm just going to give a brief overview of where we are. and where we're headed. And then Dr. Wong is going to join and give some details about the implementation plan.
So first the fake doctor speaks, then the real doctor will speak.
And the work that's been happening. I'm also joined by Dr. Tsai here as well, who will help answer questions. But as many people know, the Lanterman-Petrus Short, we call it LPS, it was a California law that was enacted in 1967, and it governs involuntary detentions, treatment, and conservatorships of people with behavioral health conditions.
And for so many years, we've heard from so many people on both sides of the aisle, notably on this radio station years ago. Dr. Drew would constantly talk about how we have to reform the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act because it is very difficult to actually get a conservatorship and get somebody who's obviously gravely disabled into treatment when they're refusing it. Right now, we have a lot of voluntary treatment. Even Gavin Newsom's Care Court is voluntary.
Under LP.
And obviously, the 70,000 people on the streets of Los Angeles County are not in a condition to determine for themselves that that's a bad idea.
Under LPS, individuals can get evaluated if they're a danger to themselves, a danger to others, or they're gravely disabled. The Department of Mental Health here in LA County has identified a set of facilities that accommodate these involuntary holds, and also make sure that at all of the facilities there are individuals that are trained to evaluate a person for holds in one of the designated facilities. So there is a process that
I would love to know the bureaucrats at the Department of Mental Health who is evaluating these people to say, yes, let's turn them back out on the streets because they're fine.
So there is a process that's long been in place. I kind of want to emphasize that there is a process for evaluating folks and determining the appropriate clinical plan.
Well, right now what happens is if somebody is a wackadoo, we can call a 72-hour hold on them and not much else. This was something Gavin Newsom touted that was going to make that easier to do more than just a 72-hour hold and turning them back onto the streets. Will it? Not really.
Based on that evaluation, and that there are people that are particularly well-trained to do those evaluations.
Okay, enough with her. She doesn't have any medical training. Let's get to the Q&A, because Hilda wants to find out, wait, if this is such a big deal and such a game changer, why is it only going to add 75 people when it's fully implemented?
Before I turn to my colleagues, I want to say thank you for the presentation.
Well, it wouldn't be a Board of Supervisors meeting if they didn't just say this all the time.
No, thank you.
It's all a thank you over and over and over again.
Before I turn to my colleagues, I want to say thank you for the presentation, and I'm glad you walked us through, and I'm also happy that we took the time, that we didn't rush into this, because it's complicated, and as you've already said, Dr. Wong and Ferrer, we're not seeing a lot of folks that are qualifying necessarily. So can you remind me what we actually think? You said 75 or something. Did I hear this wrong?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure this out too. If we're expanding the definition for conservatorships, that includes people that are severely addicted to drugs, which is a major portion of the homeless population that is up to 70,000 people in LA County, why are we only able to get 75 more people off the streets with this law that Gavin Newsom touted as a game changer?
And that was really our conservative estimate, and most likely based on other counties who have rolled out SB 43. It is a serious overestimate. Of all the different county behavioral health directors that I've spoken with to look at what their data is upon implementation, they have had almost nobody make it past urgent care.
So the people that are determined to be gravely disabled to the point where they cannot make decisions for themselves based on their addiction, because this law is now being implemented in LA County starting in January, but it's already been implemented in other neighboring counties. And they say nobody is so messed up with their addictions that they make it past a clinic where then we turn them back out. That doesn't sound right at all.
they're typically released from hold at that point. And as I mentioned,
So this law is doing nothing. Just remember when Gavin Newsom tries to tout all the successes he says he's had on reforming our mental health system, that the actual implementation of so many of these laws has amounted to practically nothing. Whether it is Proposition 1, whether it's Care Court, or reforming conservatorships. It's all, to use a term that's a little overused, a big old fat nothing burger.
and as I mentioned, one of our neighboring large counties actually saw a reduction. But, you know, the good thing that comes from that is we have more appropriate usage of, LPS. And we have
The whole idea was, okay, right now we can only put somebody in a hold and we can only put somebody in a conservatorship if they have some kind of mental illness that's not drug related. And this was supposed to add the drug component because obviously if you're riddled out on meth and you've got psychosis every day and you think people are coming to get you, so you have to stab everything around you, you're a danger to yourself and you're a danger to everyone around you. And we need the legal authority to take you away from society and put you in a locked facility. That's what I thought we were going to get. Turns out, no.
better collaborating system and a method of training people consistently across entities, and also a better sense of collaboration, that we are all working on this together.
Okay, even the doctors are full of cliches.
And one thing that I think is somewhat lost on the public when this first came out was that this was going to be a silver bullet, that all of a sudden you were going to see people off the streets and they were going to be in secured facilities or locked,
Well, that's how Gavin sold it.
so to speak. And they
But the last thing that LA County wants to do is have a locked facility for anything, and they do not believe in the concept of involuntary treatment. Barbara Ferrer believes that doesn't work. Barbara Ferrer believes you only get treatment when you're ready. And until you're ready, we'll keep giving you needles and pipes to continue your addiction.
and they don't really understand fully how this works. So I have a feeling we're going to go through this for umpteen times to try to explain to them in a graph what it is and what it isn't.
And it turns out this is once again something that was touted as a game changer by the governor, by the legislature, that amounts to a rounding error. If the definition of gravely disabled expansion to substance use only adds 75 people to care, to getting treatment, that's practically meaningless. Let's hear what Janice has to say about this.
Supervisor Hahn, I know you're waiting to ask questions here.
I've been waiting 2 years.
And it was only going to add 75 people to our system. Why is it taking us 2 years to implement this do-nothing law?
So the expanded definition is basically if your substance abuse or your mental capacity has impacted your ability to take care of yourself, maybe even take your medications. So that kind of is.
Sometimes it feels like Janice is actively thinking while she's figuring out what the question is she wants to ask, but I'm here for it.
Take your medications. So that kind of is that what the major expanded definition refers to?
I think that's basically it, but it's beyond just taking your medication. It really is, you're not able to make
By the way, this is just an aside. Speaking of medication and mental illness, I was watching the Emmys the other night, and there were only two kinds of commercials that you would see on the Emmys. There were a bunch for Broadway productions at the Pantages or at the Segerstrom Center. Those were cool. And then there was a lot of pharmaceutical ads. And some of them were for chronic kidney disease, chronic bowel disease. But one of them was, and it was so weird. There was a ad on the Emmys broadcast on Paramount Plus for a pill that you should take every day if you're experiencing schizophrenia. And I didn't know that we had an over-the-counter schizophrenia drug, and that's a little wild.
You're not able to make a decision to take medication that is potentially life-saving medication.
Right.
So it's that, as well as not being able to live safely in the community.
So,
well, I feel like there's 70,000 people that meet that definition.
So for the public who may, I mean, you all are so close to this, and, you know, most of us have begun to understand, you know, the LPS. But for the public, what can you just walk through?
I love when Janice does can you explain this to me like I'm 5? For them, for the public, not for me. But the public doesn't understand what you're talking about. So can you dumb this down for me?
What this looks like for a person that someone sees on the streets and wants this 5150 hold. How does that work?
I thought the whole idea was we want more than a 5150 hold because those don't really do anything. If somebody is speaking in tongues and babbling on the streets and brandishing a knife, 72 hours in the ER isn't going to really do anything. You're just sending them back out on the streets. Wasn't the whole point of expanding conservatorship that, oh, this person can't think for themselves, so this person needs to be in a locked facility? But it turns out the state law doesn't mean anything, and as you will find out as we listen to more of this, that's the last thing that the LA County Board of Supervisors actually wants to happen. The last thing they want to see is locked facilities for anybody, whether it's the mentally ill, whether it's the drug addicted, or, honestly, the criminals too. 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Ray in El Segundo. Ray, hello.
Yes, I mean, they don't want to lock up a lot of these people because there's so many of them that suffer from politician derangement syndrome, and a lot of them are criminals, and they don't want them locked up. I mean, they'd be locking themselves up.
That's a very, very, very good point, because you can look at several members of the LA City Council or the LA County Board of Supervisors and say they are a danger to us and society. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Why do you think California politicians are so opposed to locked facilities? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. We'll take your calls and we'll hear more of what Janice has to say and Lindsay Horvath as we go through LA County's implementation of a conservatorship law that's going to take maybe 75 people off the streets next year. 800-222-KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, as we go through today's LA County Board of Supervisors meeting, as the supervisors are discussing the implementation of SB 43, a law passed and signed 2 years ago that was supposed to expand conservatorships, expand the definition of gravely disabled to include people with substance use disorder, like, 70,000 people on the streets of Los Angeles County. And according to the health experts, once this law is fully implemented, it will add 75 people to treatment. We're going to find out what Janice has to say and her opposition to any kind of locked facilities or involuntarily putting people in treatment that don't want to be there. 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. In the meantime, do I have something exciting for you. 790 KABC welcomes Megyn Kelly live with special guest Jillian Michaels, Fifth Column, and Maureen Callahan at the Honda Center on November 21st. Tickets on sale now at megankelly.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Sabretooth Touring. Good luck dialing. Let's go to John in Thousand Oaks. John, hello. John? Are you on mute? John going once. John going twice. Give us a call back, John. What happened? 800-222-KABC is the phone number. We'll get back to the Board of Supervisors meeting unless John calls back. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, your emails at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. We're going through the LA County Board of Supervisors as they talk to the Department of Public Health and Mental Health and Health Services about the implementation of SB 43. This is one of the things Gavin Newsom advertised that was going to solve the homelessness crisis. Care Court and this, the expansion of gravely disabled for conservatorships, the expansion of people who are not able to take care of themselves that the state has to step in and take care of. And I think everyone agreed that's a great idea. But according to the people that are implementing this law that was signed 2 years ago, when it goes into effect, it might help 75 people in LA County, where LA County has a population of 70,000 homeless people on the streets, and the vast majority of them have a severe mental illness or are drug addicted, so that doesn't add up. Let's get to the phones before we get back to Janice Hahn, and let's go to John in Thousand Oaks. John, hello.
Oh, Randy, I'm back. Here's what I can tell you about Ventura County, which is a little bit easier to work with than LA County. On August 22nd, an 81-year-old who my wife knew through a placement service who couldn't take care of herself, was put on a 5150 72-hour hold in Ventura County. They assessed her, and they put her on a 5250, which is a 14-day hold. They moved her to the Valley. She went through her 14 days, and she's now at some sort of residence on the west side. Now, the fact that my wife knew she couldn't take care of herself was not enough. Adult Protective Services had to get involved, and they are reluctant to get involved because my wife was not a conservator, either for the estate or for the person, as we say in the law biz. This woman this 81-year-old needs help. She can't take care of herself. She's going to need to get a conservator to do something with her now that she's in this long-term placement. Going through the civil process to become one of the two types or both types of conservator is not a simple process. It's going to be expensive, but at whose expense? Somebody's going to have to make the appearances in court after filing the documents after it gets on the calendar. That's not easy. I can tell you, as a DA of 30 years in LA County, it's much easier in the criminal system. I worked in the drug and alcohol court as well as the regular courts during those 30 years. At least you could get somebody. We used to send them to Metropolitan State for evaluation. I think this whole cock-up began in, the 60s with the Lanterman-Petrie Act, which the Democrats shoved down Governor Reagan's throat, and everything has gone to hell since then. If they're not identifying the problem, they can't come up with a solution. So far, there's nobody working, as far as I can see, to identify the root problem, and then to take the next steps to get somebody in the 5150 and the 5250 after that. Gavin is spending our money on I don't know how many other things, and the cops are not allowed to deal with dangerous people on a daily basis.
Oh, you're totally right about that. And we're pretending that we're addressing the problem. Gavin's running around the country saying he addressed the problem. But when we're implementing what those changes are, it's almost helping nobody. And it's not making the instrumental changes that we need for the state to have to step in and take care of people that can't take care of themselves. Thank you so much for the call and all that information,
Thank
John.
you.
I really appreciate it. Let's go to Rich in Newport. Rich, hello.
Hey, Randy. First of all, I don't know how anybody can listen to that dribble without wanting to poke their eardrums out. Those people they're just horrible people. Thank you for this. Thank you for this. Doctor. Oh, you got a white coat on. What a bunch of losers. Anyway, 75 people, not a win. The fact that they're glad-handing and slapping themselves on the back just tells you everything you need to know. And it's also the reason that people voted for Trump, because this is the opposite of what he does. He looks at a problem, and then he figures it out, and then he implements it. Problem solved. Honestly, if he could come to L.A., God willing, he could solve the homeless issue probably within a week. What do you think?
Well, I think what we're doing in LA is we look at a problem and we figure out ways to create even more bureaucracy, even when the problem is bureaucracy. And we've seen that over and over and over again. And that's why, even though this sounded great when it passed, implementation is showing it's not going to do a damn thing.
That's correct. The problem is you still have the same bureaucrats in charge, protecting themselves, protecting their friends, creating bureaucracy and making it bigger. Terrible.
Thanks so much for the call, Rich. Appreciate it. We're also, when we have people who are in elected office or in this mindset that incarceration is bad, whether it's criminal incarceration or mental incarceration or substance use incarceration, the whole ethos behind Prop 36, which the state won't fully fund, is if people keep getting arrested for drugs and theft and all that kind of stuff, you've got to force them into treatment. There are people in elected office and people appointed like Babs who don't believe in that, who believe that doesn't work, who believe that that's a failure. And when we elect people and appoint people like that into positions of power whose whole mindset is decarceration in every sense, you remember the whole idea of we were going to replace Men's Central Jail with a state-of-the-art mental health facility, because everyone will tell you that Men's Central Jail in LA County is the largest mental health facility in the country. Well, that was the plan until the Board of Supervisors got a new majority and they decided, we're not going to go through that plan and we're going to go through a Care First Jails Last agenda and work on closing that facility. That facility got even more decrepit. Turns out you can't close it because obviously, and now they're getting sued by the state attorney general for how bad the conditions are, and the people that are suffering, that are mentally ill in that facility, are still stuck without any actual help. This government is not a good one. Let's go to Lawrence in Westminster. Lawrence, hello.
Hi, Randy. I heard you plug in this pill a little bit ago that treats schizophrenia over the counter, and I was really curious. I have some friends that have TDS, and do you think that might treat that as well?
I don't know if that's going to treat that. I feel like it's a very different symptom. I don't know if we have an over-the-pill counter remedy for TDS yet. But if we do, believe you me, I'm sure they'll pay for some advertising time on this radio station. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. 1-800-222-5222. When we come back, we'll hear Janice Hahn as she tries to figure out what makes sense about expanding the conservatorship law in California to a point where it helps 75 more people. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Let's get back to Janice Hahn, try to figure out how exactly we are implementing this expansion of conservatorship in Los Angeles County.
What this looks like for a person that someone sees on the streets and wants this 5150 hold. How does that work? Who asks for the 5150 hold? Where are they held? Are they held in jail? Are they held in a hospital, in an emergency room, in one of our mental health urgent care? What exactly is this for the public listening to this? What will they see or hear or feel? And what if a member of the public sees someone that fits this description? How does this work?
Yeah. If I see somebody that's wandering around very close to where I live that is obviously insane or methed out, how can I get them some help?
Well, we thank you for the question, Supervisor. We do have a basic workflow, but it's very, very basic about what happens when somebody's evaluated, how they were taken, to the first place, whatever. But when it comes down to it, it really depends on who is initiating it. Because if it's somebody from law enforcement, then it could be they take them to, practically speaking, a psych ER, which they know will take less time because they need to be back on the street, right? And I mean, not the client, but the law enforcement person, and then they'll be evaluated.
You imagine the day in the life of somebody that works in a psych ER? I'm having a really hard time watching that show on HBO Max, The Pit. It's fantastic. It's just really hard to watch because it's so real of how awful that experience is of being in an emergency room at a county hospital. And I can't imagine what that's like with a mental facility, but I'm sure if you saw what it was like, none of those people are making enough money.
And I mean, not the client, but the law enforcement person. And then they'll be evaluated and they'll decide, will they accept that hold? Will it be 24 hours? Will they stay the 72 hours?
Does our mental health urgent care fit that description?
In fact, the majority of people who have been engaged because of SB 43 have all gone to urgent cares.
You mean like the place I go if I have a migraine?
And that has been the most common receiver of people being 5150 based on SB 43. And what happens there is somebody like, let's say, a psychiatric mobile response team answers a call to evaluate somebody who's acting very erratically. And it's found out now with SB 43 that it's not because of the mental health condition, but because they have ingested a large amount of methamphetamines.
Oh boy. Okay. So what happens? Somebody ingested a whole bunch of meth. They think the demons are chasing them. They want to light everything on fire. What do we do?
And that would still qualify them to be put on a hold. So they take them to the hold. They can go to an urgent care facility. And at that facility, that only goes up to 24 hours. So
Then what? So the expansion of conservatorship actually means that we take everyone to a psychiatric urgent care where we can only hold them for 24 hours. But then what?
So the facility will decide, do they release them from the hold or do they continue them to a different facility to where they could be held for 72 hours? And then it gets evaluated from there. Now, in practical terms, nobody has really gone beyond the urgent care.
Okay, then this obviously has way too many loopholes, or whoever's deciding that these people don't need the help that they obviously need is being incentivized to not put them in further care. Maybe it's because the county doesn't want to pay for this. I don't know.
So far, and that's probably, Dr. Sy and Dr. Ferrer can probably speak to it better, but that's probably because if it was some kind of acute behavior, due to substance abuse, once they clear up, the behavior changes.
But they're addicted to the substance. Isn't that the whole idea? This is a disease. It's not bad behavior. They're physically addicted to the meth. They can't stop taking meth. Obviously, they're different when they're off meth than when they're on meth. But if they're addicted to meth and we don't want to help them with that, aren't we sending them back onto the streets to inevitably get more meth, get high on meth, and do something crazy on meth? I'm not the brightest person in the world, and how do I understand this better than the people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars? Some of them actual doctors, some of them fake doctors. We'll continue with the insane asylum, except those aren't allowed in California. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC as we continue the Explaining How California Government Works hour. We passed a law that would expand conservatorships to people that are gravely disabled because of substance use. Drug addicts getting conservatorships. Sounds like a great idea. In practice, somebody gets picked up for being rampantly crazy on meth. They take them to a psychiatric urgent care for 24 hours until the meth wears off, and then they're fine and they go back out on the streets. don't think that's going to work.
By a clinician who's been trained to evaluate them to see whether or not they actually meet the criteria for a hold. Because we may all look at people and, our perception may be absolutely this person, should be held involuntarily. We think they're, at risk of harming themselves, or they're behaving in ways that are irrational, which is really what most of the calls are. But the system really depends and has always depended upon that evaluator who is making a clinical judgment about where the best place is for that person to receive their care.
And I want to know who's doing that evaluating and what is their motivation. Because if somebody is racked out on meth, they've lost all their teeth, they're starting fires, and we pick them up and we put them on a 24-hour hold, and you're telling me that evaluator says, yeah, they're good to go back out on the street, even though they have nowhere to go. That's something wrong. Who's incentivizing that decision? There's a problem there. There's a breakdown there. And this isn't just LA County wide. These are the results that we're hearing from the neighboring counties that have already implemented this, and it's not working.
That's why all of the work we're doing right now on training everybody on what the new definitions are and how you would, in fact, assess a person and evaluate a person is critical to this working.
Also, fun fact, methamphetamine use, prolonged methamphetamine use, actually causes mental illnesses like psychosis, like schizophrenia. But no, if they're on meth and they finally wear off from the meth, they're fine. No, not how this works.
Right. But I do want to point out, the general public, as always.
Also, I know this doesn't matter anymore in California, but if somebody goes to a facility, a psychiatric urgent care for 24 hours because, to quote Dr. Wong, they ingested a massive amount of meth, shouldn't, after they recover from that, go to jail? I mean, I know it's a misdemeanor, but should we, get one of those 1 of 3 charges for Prop 36 going? No, we can't do that. That's inhumane.
Has had to defer to clinicians to make that a sort of essential evaluation.
But say a member of the public saw somebody that they think fits this definition. Who do they call?
They can call 911. They can call our 800 number for the Department of Mental Health. They can contact their different referrals for people who are unhoused. So there are a number of ways that they can contact somebody to come and evaluate them. But essentially, even if that person gets put on a hold and gets taken to a facility, then it comes down to that person who's receiving at the facility what happens.
So there's a breakdown here somewhere because we have the ability to send these people to facilities now, and the facilities are saying, nope, not crazy enough. Well, we'll keep trying to figure out how to fix this one. Thank you all so much for listening as we always try to dive deep into the nonsense of California government. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.